Dawn, Mark, and Justin finished setting up their cozy little bonfire in the clearing. The woods around them were silent that Halloween night. All three were dressed in their Halloween costumes, and their candy stash sitting right there beside them. Mark and Dawn welcomed Justin into their group. Usually, there are 6 of them who regularly meet up in the circle. They were inspired by a horror TV series where young friends would sit around and tell scary stories in the dark. Their little group was not interested in ghosts or monsters. Instead, they talked more about scary, true crime, horror stories. The lurid details of horrific acts interest them more than the supernatural. Justin is Dawn's friend, who tagged along. They just moved into the neighborhood from the big city. Justin guaranteed that he had some really good chills to share, as the city had its share of crazy tales. And so, even though everyone and all their other friends called it a night, the 3 decided to meet up. Besides, no better time to scare people than tonight. Halloween horror stories are the best. Mark started. This story happened in the Midwest this month. Trish and May were on their way to a college Halloween party in early October. They were wearing the most obvious costume of the season, Squid Game. Trish was wearing the Squid Game robot doll, while May was content to don the worker costume, her face invisible. There were many early Halloween parties throughout the month, and May wanted to maximize them because she was finally free. Free from a 4-year toxic relationship with an abusive boyfriend, Maddie. Trish was absolutely crucial in her escape from that relationship. She assisted May by calling her parents, convincing them that something was wrong, and physically driving her friend away from Maddie, who has also fallen to alcohol addiction. May held her hand all the time, Trish becoming her comfort zone, a place of refuge for her. Finally, they arrived at the party, and it was a lot of fun. There was great music, the crowd was wild, and the party was the bomb. May took off her mask as she drank on a small round table while chatting with Trish. When May took off her mask, Trish could still see the parts of the black eye that was now healing. But tonight was different. She finally saw May smile after a long time. Then, May stopped, startled. She accidentally poured her drink on her dress. Trish asked what was wrong. May smiled and said she was just getting paranoid. She thought she saw Maddie. Trish said that this is impossible, since he was in another city entirely. Plus, if he ever shows up, they have a restraining order against him. May laughed. She was being silly, she thought. She put her mask on and said she had to go to the bathroom to clean up. Trish offered to go with her, but May said she would be fine. Trish stayed in the table and finished her drink. A few minutes later, she sees May at the door, beckoning her to leave. Even if Trish couldn't see her face, she could tell that May was in a rush. Trish realized what was going on and thought that Maddie could be in the crowd. She rushes out with Trish, leaving her drinks and the table empty. 3 minutes later, May arrives at the table. She takes off her mask and started looking around, wondering where Trish could be. She asked some people around her if they saw her leave. After asking several people, someone replied, "Oh, the Squid Game robot girl! Yeah, I saw her go out with someone wearing the same costume as you!" May's jaw dropped. She rushed out of the club and looked around. She ran through the streets, shouting Trish's name. She hears it from the dark alley. Maddie's voice. "She's here," he said. She sees Maddie in the same costume as hers, being a skinny guy himself, It was easy to confuse him with May. Trish's face was bashed in. Matty looking at her, his costume dripping with blood, holding a bloody knife, and sitting beside Trish's lifeless body. He tells her they were meant to be. He removes his mask, and he is crying, his face looking disheveled and very much haggard.
Our love was perfect. She was just pushing us apart. Now that she's gone, we can be together again.
May herself was crying, but then she nodded her head. She agreed with Matty, telling him that yes, she still loves him. She apologized for everything she did. Matty was overjoyed. May ran to his arms, and they share a hug. May then angrily bites at his ear, tearing it off. The pain makes Matty fall to the ground. May grabs the knife and proceeded to stab and stab. For Trish, she thought, and for my freedom. The robot doll face is now covered in blood as she held on to the same knife that took her friend's life. Back at the campfire, Justin said that it is his turn, and he guaranteed them that they will never hear a scarier story than this. He insisted that this was actually a true horror story. People in his town are still haunted by this creepy Halloween tale. 5 years ago in a city block, 2 brothers were trick-or-treating. Justin was 8, and Tyler was 10. Their single mom was working 3 jobs, and so she gave them permission to trick-or-treat as long as they don't go very far. In their town, there is this old house, rumored to be haunted. Yet, Tyler insists that there was someone living there. They pass through several houses, hauling their candy collection. Then, they pass by the supposed haunted house. Tyler told Justin that they should have fun and knock, then run. Kids do this a lot during Halloween, and some people do find this rather annoying. Justin vehemently disagreed. He said if there were ghosts there, then he would be especially in danger tonight. Tyler told him he can stay there on the street if he wants. He was going for it. Tyler climbed the tall, mossy brick wall, and Tyler was left in the street. For a short while, Justin was very anxious. He peeked through the gate, but could barely see anything as it was covered in vines and leaves. He saw his brother approach the house, looked back at him, and smiled. Then finally, Tyler was in the door of the house. He rings the doorbell. Nothing. Tyler looked back at Justin and shrugged. Justin felt relief at that moment. But then, the door opened. A big hand reached out and snatched Tyler. Justin screamed loudly. He ran across the street to some trick-or-treaters. He told the parents what happened. A mom just told him to stop it, because now is not a good night for pranks. They wouldn't believe him. He approached another group, where the dad asked him what was wrong. He explained what happened, and because of the noise, it was hard for the guy to fully grasp what was happening. Instead of wasting any more time explaining, he just drags the guy by the hand and brings him to the house. The man quickly spoke to other people and told them to come. But they were too late. When they got to the house, they realized that the backside of the house had a hole in the fence. Whoever took Tyler was gone. What remained were parts of his mummy costume on the ground. In the hole of the fence, there is another scrap of the mummy costume with some blood on it. That was the last time Tyler was ever heard from. Rumors around the town swirled. There were some sightings of him with a roving group of criminals apparently, but those are just rumors. Wherever Tyler is now, they will never find him again. Don was very impressed with Justin's story, whereas Mark said he was underwhelmed. Justin asked why. Mark said that the ending was just that he was abducted and that's all. Lots of kids get abducted. This is so common. Justin smiled and replied,
But you see, the story is ongoing. Sometimes you just have to do what it takes to survive. Sometimes you need to play along and do stuff you're not happy with. Sometimes you have to be bad to live.
Don asked what exactly he's talking about. Justin replied,
On Halloween night, it's harder to catch people, you know? It's harder to identify suspects. And that's what I learned when I knocked at that house that day.
Mark laughed and said,
Nice twist to the story. Very different.
Justin replied,
I don't think you understand. This is not a story. This is my Halloween story. I was once called Tyler, you know?
Suddenly, Justin and Dawn are surrounded by men with duct tape and rope. Justin smiled.
And now...
Dawn and Mark are crying as their mouths are covered in tape.
It's your story too.